Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Bricks King podcast, where I'm going to bend your ear about Lego, review those amazing bricks of plastic, and discuss what is new and up and coming around the Lego world. I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's build on it. Welcome in, everybody. How are we doing today? Hope everybody is doing quite well out there around the world. If you're not, I'm sorry. Today, we're going to talk about the Rolling Stones art set, believe it or not. Something very weird to be expected. Did not see this one coming. Way out of left field. 31206 is the set number that we're going to be rolling with today. The retail price for this thing, both Euro and USD here in the United States, is 150. Big ones. Pretty decent amount there. Also, 120 if you live over in the UK, use the pounds. Or a pound, I guess, has 1,998 pieces. 1998. 1998 was a good year. Yeah, right? Anyway, so this thing is already massive. It doesn't have as many pieces as like the world map does, and maybe even some of the other sets that are out there art-wise. But my goodness, this is a whole different ballgame. Typically, you think of the art sets kind of flat base, you put in the dots, or you put in the tiles, you put in the all that kind of stuff. And that's just not the case here. There's much more to it because this thing has much more texture. It has much more depth than any of the art sets that has been done before. Now, I am a giant fan of some of the art sets that have come out, the world map, because like I've said in the past, I'm a geography nerd. I absolutely love that kind of stuff. But this was different. And I'll be honest, when I had this thing arrive, I immediately was like, what is it? Like, I knew what it was, but like, what are you? I know you're the logo, you're the Rolling Stones. What are you? You look so out of place in anything else in the Lego catalog. Your art, okay, you don't really fit with the art. You're not a regular set. You don't really fit with the regular sets. You have a different funky design. Again, you don't really fit with the art stuff. You're textured, don't really fit with the art stuff. There was a lot of weird things that I had to get over in my head that I had already had things built up in my mind with the Lego art stuff. Now, with that in mind, I am not complaining whatsoever on how they did this. It is still really weird. With that in mind, I don't know. I didn't grow up listening to the Rolling Stones. Wasn't a fan of the Rolling Stones. I've heard a few of their songs. Just wasn't my wheelhouse. Didn't grow up around it. And I'm not a giant music buff to begin with. So even if one of their songs, it would have to be like super popular. It'd be like one of the few, I shouldn't say one of the few, one of the big ones. Then I would probably be like, oh, it's the Rolling Stones. But I usually don't associate music. And anyway, so with that in mind, don't beat me up with that. Just kind of like with the Ferrari, don't beat me up with the, me not knowing a whole lot about the Rolling Stones. Anyway. So I wanted to start off by saying this thing is actually really, really, really big for an art set. It's thick. It's really, really kind of, its shape is just, it's just bizarre. Because again, we're used to rectangles or we're used to squares. This is not. This is freeform. And like I said, it's sloped, it's textured. It has smoother edges, it has rougher edges. There's a whole bunch to it. Now, it still does use the underlying concept of the new pieces that they use for the art sets. New is when art came out, not brand new for these. And they use those bases that Technic pin into each other, and then you build up off of those. Well, in the past, what has been done with those is you are only simply adding a stud, a tile or a 1x1 plate, a rounded plate, that just has the one stud on it. This is different because now this is layered. This feels like I don't know. It gives it that 3D appearance, which is great because I don't think you could have really done it any other way. I think if you would have just done it flat, it would have looked kind of cruddy, to be honest. But they didn't. They stepped out of the box and they did something completely different. So let's talk about what the completely different really has to offer. So one of the first things that you notice about this is it is quite thick. It is fairly heavy for its size. Now the Lego world map is much heavier. It's much more flimsy than this. This has a lot of rigidity to it. I was really surprised to see how that is the case, but they really kept it into a nice position here. Now, one of the things I found super fascinating to me was how do you manage to, how do you turn something 2D into 3D? And they really did a unique job of doing this. So you've got your basic, like Lego art plates, like I said, I've got pieces falling off on me, but you've got your Lego art plates, standard stuff, but then you're building up off of those out on the side. You're using some Technic members, you're using some bricks on the side, studs on the side, construction here, using some different things that you might not expect to usually see with art sets. Yes, like I said, you've got the standard templates and stuff like that, but you've only got a few of them. And then you've got these rectangular Technic frames that are pinned in, and then they're reinforced on the back with plates and bricks and stuff like that. Kind of like we've seen with other stuff. This isn't anything new. But that is essentially giving you your height, that is your distance and stuff like that, so that you can start building up off of it. Now, there are a lot more Lego plates and parts that I would have ever expected in a Lego art set. The little piddly stuff like the tiles or these little tiny little bows or the ingots, stuff like that, the tiny little slopes. I get that. This is not what I expected, because you're taking art and you're mixing it with kind of more like along the lines of building a system set, because you can run your hand down across this and you've got multiple levels. So you have the black underlying level. Some of it, you can actually see the art templates underneath here around just above the tongue and stuff like that. Then you move to the next level above that. You've got your red, you've got some of your white, the inside of the tongue, like in the back of the throat, kind of like if you think about your uvula where that's hanging out in the back. Then you've got the red around the lips and stuff like that. Then you move to the next level. You've got some white on the what look like eyes from a distance on the top of the lips, on the top lip. They're not. It's just the sheen that is there. But then you start moving into the multi-tiered tongue. And the tongue is a whole separate 2 levels from that, where you have the red of the tongue and then you have the white accent. Now, this was probably my favorite part to build because there's something hidden underneath, and I don't have an exact answer as to why this was done, but I'm going to speculate. So the tongue is super interesting. You just kind of drag your hand across it and you're like, okay, there's studs, there's flat, there's not, there's curves, there's edges, there's rough edges, there's smooth edges. It's just a different feel. It is, I'm that person. I'm going to walk up to you. If your shirt or your whatever you're wearing, shirt, not pants, I ain't going to go grab somebody's, but I'm going to come up and grab your arm and I'm going to be like, oh, that's kind of interesting, because I'm curious. I'm a sensory person. I'm very, very heavy sensory person. So for me, if this is hanging on your wall in your house, I'm coming up and I'm rubbing my dirty paws all over it. I've got to get the experience of what exactly I'm dealing with here. And then I want to take my fingers and go around the outside of it, right? I'm going to take my hands, go around the outside of it and see what it looks like, what it feels like. My favorite part about the build experience, which I had already kind of mentioned, was the fact that this is a 3D model, where it's not just looking at it straight. You look at it from the side, it's got a somewhat different elevation and stuff. But what is hidden underneath the part of the tongue, the main part of the tongue, is you have this thing where it is spelled out here, and it says 60. They use some studs here, and it's spelled out the letter 6 and 0. Now, the only thing that I can think of is they've been around for 60 years because I know they're old. It's got to be an anniversary there of some kind. I don't think Lego would just create this out of the, bright blue sky and just be like, here we go, guys, enjoy this, right? I don't think that would typically be the case. So you've got this weird kind of design underneath, and part of me is like, it's like the best part, man. You're covering up the best part. And it is cool. It's something unexpected. Honestly, it's really unexpected. So then you cater to this lovely tongue with adding its exterior texture and stuff like that. You don't so much worry about the underneath anymore, but I like the color shading, how it went. It went from multiple different yellows into orange into two different colors of red. I thought that was really cool. And then, I don't really know what else to say about it because it is such a funky set. Now it can be hung on the wall. There are two little hanger hooks that are on the back. Much to my chagrin, I hate having to do those because they are kind of a pain in the butt. One is great. Two is always a nightmare, especially when you're trying to get things level and lined up and everything like that. It does come with a printed tile, a 2x4 tile here that says the Rolling Stones established 1962, which, who's doing their math? That would be their 60th anniversary. I just don't know when exactly that date is. I'm assuming it's not June 1st, but this is available June 1st for those of you that are interested in spending your pennies or your money that way. I will say though, as a art build, I feel a lot more security in how this was built than I did the map, than I did with, what was the other one? Is it Marilyn Monroe, right? Yes. Marilyn Monroe. I just feel different with this versus any of the other art sets, just because it's not just these plates. It's not these special art plates. There's more to it. There's, like I said, more rigidity to it with all these other Technic pieces that are used here and all the plates and such that are locking it into position. The thing you get with the other art sets is there's so much flex in the entirety of the build because all you're doing is putting studs or you're putting tiles down. And yes, you have some backing with some plates and things like that, but that's it. Other than that, that's it. And you end up running into this situation where if you maneuver it around too much or whatever, you end up having a problem with the flex and plates start popping off. And it's just not a pretty sight. It's just not a pretty sight when you're dealing with that, especially something as big as the map. Don't try moving the map. It is a nightmare. Anyway, as a whole, I think this is a pretty neat set. I love that it's an anniversary set. There's not a whole lot of things to really discuss about it. A lot of red pieces. If you're a parts pack person, this is an expensive parts pack, but there's a lot of good angled pieces, a lot of good tiled angled pieces, just tiles in general. That could be worth it to some. I mean, that could be worth it to a lot of people. One of the things I did notice, though, is that if you do kind of manipulate this thing around a little bit too much, you're going to have to go back and basically re-thumb or finger all the pieces that are on the top, because you're going to have some that come slightly loose. As we started this episode, I had a few that already had come loose, kind of near the edges, but it's nothing that's that big of a deal. The last thing I wanted to touch on before I get out of here with this, the sides of this thing are very unique in the sense that flat, then there's some bows that give it this ridge-like feeling, and then there's some sharper angles. It's a weird texture to have on the outside, but I honestly don't know how they could have made it any better or butter. I'm hungry. That's why butter's on my mind. But with that said, if you're interested in Rolling Stones, this will definitely be for you. You can hang it on your wall and get an interesting perspective, to say the least. An interesting perspective. This is definitely going to be something where some people are going to look at it and be like, that is weird. Where did you get that? Oh, Well, I found it at auction, at an art auction. If you're somebody that wants to celebrate the 60th anniversary, you could leave the top section off, and that way you're able to see the 60 in the tongue. I think that's a cool idea as well. Nobody's going to hate on you either way. The only thing that I could think of is I might also want to have part of the tongue displayed. And I know somebody out there is going to come up with an idea to do this, but you're free and clear to do so because I don't care. But take the pieces that you're not using to cover the inside of the tongue, the 60, and put them onto a plated network of its own in a way that you could stick it on or take it off, if you want to be like, hey, check out what's underneath. Because someone that's going to come over to my house, if I were a Rolling Stones fan and this is hanging, and I could say, hey, there's a number 60 under there. Yeah, sure there is, Bob. Sure there is. You've had a long day. Too much sun. But it would be neat to be able to be like, hey, look at this thing underneath here. It'd be a really cool idea. So that is the Rolling Stones Lego art set that is available June 1st here in another 2 days, I believe. 2 days. Yep. I'm looking at my calendar right now. Another 2 days. This thing is going to be available. You guys will probably hear this just beforehand, maybe even on the day of. But $150, not a bad deal. Like I said, good parts pack. And it commemorates a big anniversary for one of the all-time great bands that was out there, even though if I don't know that much about them. So with that in mind, that's going to wrap up this lovely episode. Until we meet again, I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's bet on it.